I wanted to go over the officer-involved shooting of Mr. Desmond Ray. I feel that it's critically important that we get information out there for the greater good of the community, and always in keeping in mind with transparency and accountability, as we always have. That's why we put out the police department's accountability report to show where officers, we disclose the discipline of officers, in addition to officers who have received various medals for life-saving measures and also for valor and heroism. We also published the end-of-year police report to show how our impacts and involvement in the community and what we do and how we work very well with the community that we serve. Today, I'm going to show you 3 videos. The first video will be the Ring doorbell system. And there are several things within that Ring doorbell video that I want to highlight and take note of. The second one will be the body-worn video of the driver officer. And the third is the body-worn video of the passenger officer. It's crucial in laying out the context of what happened on that day, just to show the community what actually occurred, the involvement of our officers, and the lengths that we go through. On that night, this is what occurred. On Sunday, April 4th, 2021, Birmingham police officers were involved in an incident at approximately 10:50 p.m. The Birmingham Communications Department received a third-party call stating that 2 individuals were involved in a domestic disturbance inside of a vehicle that was traveling in North Birmingham. 911 dispatchers were able to obtain critical information such as location, description of the vehicle, and they provided that to responding officers. North Precinct officers observed this vehicle. In the 300 block of 9th Avenue West, officers attempted to stop the vehicle. However, the driver, later determined to be Mr. Desmond Ray, refused to stop, which led officers into a vehicle pursuit. The vehicle later came to rest on the 200 block of 9th Avenue West after it collided with a fence line. The driver exited the vehicle, confronted the officers, and fired 1 round in the officer's direction. And one of our officers then returned fire, striking the suspect, an individual at that time. Birmingham Fire and Rescue responded, and they were able to provide medical treatment and transport him to UAB Hospital with life-threatening injuries. And as you know, he did not survive. Before I go into the video, I first want to extend my condolences to the Ray family. I know that this is a critical incident or a significant emotional event for them and their family, and we all extend our deepest condolences. But I think it's important for the greater good of the community that we hear and see what happened. This first video is going to be the Ring doorbell system. The Ring doorbell system, what you should focus on and hear is, number 1, it's going to show you that there was a vehicle pursuit or responding officers involved. Number 2, it's going to give you sound. The sound that you will hear is, first, you're going to hear 1 round. That first round we've determined came from the handgun that Mr. Ray had. Then you will hear a pause for approximately 2.6 seconds, at which time our officers, and you will later see, are moving into position, and they return fire on Mr. Ray. The third thing you'll see is a number of responding officers, all of whom were responding to the scene to provide the necessary assistance that was requested by those officers already at scene. And we're going to show that system right now. This next video, the next video is going to be from our driver officer. And this video is going to show several things: the mindset of the officer, the fact that they were in pursuit. It's going to show that this was a true emergency, and the mindset of the officers at the time that everything was going down, the information they received, and the responses that they provided at that time. And we'll start with the video right now. Please keep in mind with our body worn, there's a 30-second delay in sound, and that's with all of our body worn cameras.
We got one down. Black man, white t-shirt, blue jean. White t-shirt, blue jean, blue hat. He armed, he's still moving. I do not move. Not moving. Hey, stay right there.
So as you can see, the officers responded to the scene. There was a traffic collision where the driver of the vehicle crashed the vehicle into the fence line along here. This is where the suspect took off, and in this direction, the officer involved shooting occurred. And as you can see, down here we have Mr. Desmond Ray, who's laying on the ground. The officers are telling him not to move, not to move. From there, you will see. From here, you will see several times as he continues to move. At one point within the next few seconds, you will notice that he will move around, he'll lift his body, and he'll raise his hand. This was the only delay for medical services. Our officers maintain a trauma kit inside the vehicle, and they provide medical treatment when necessary. And we're going to move on with the video, but you'll be able to see his movement. Okay, so at this point, the officers, when the officers exit their vehicle, is when the first round was fired at our officers. The officers were uncertain as to the condition of the person inside the vehicle. They didn't know if Mr. Ray was firing upon to shoot the young lady inside of the car, if she was trying to shoot our officers or someone else in the community. So this officer had the other one cover while he went back to check on the well-being of the individual who was still inside the vehicle.
Are you shot? No, I don't know. Are you still moving? Hey, let's see your hand. Do not reach for that gun. Do not reach. Hey, I tell you right there, stand by him right there. Don't you reach. Do not reach. Hey, who's that unit right here in front of the complex? Hey, don't move. Hey, did he throw the gun? Hey, we 24. We can't see the gun though. It's still moving. Hey. Hey, he hit. We hit him. He hit. Hey, he right here. He right here. Right here. See, can you see what you see? You go ahead and roll him in. We're going to try to secure him. He down. He's been hit. Hey, come here. Give me one more unit right here with me.
You can hear the officers ask for the medics. The officers ask for the medics on 2 occasions, and he tells them when to roll into the circumstance. Go ahead.
That's 10-4. We don't know. He fired a shot at him when he got in the car. Somebody call me. I'm going in. All right, come on. There's a gun right there. The gun right there. And I'm cutting.
As you can see at this point, as soon as the officers move up, there's a handgun right here within arm's reach of Mr. Ray. This is the handgun that was recovered at the scene, in addition to 1 shell casing from this handgun that was fired in the direction or at our officers.
Hey, make somebody watch behind. Well, we got a female back there. Tell him start the minute. Tell him go ahead. Hey, 24, you can go ahead and roll the minute. You good?
This is the second time that they request their ambulance, and they tell them to go ahead and roll the ambulance into the scene. So now we'll go into the driver officer. As you can see, there are 3 videos. This will be the 3rd of the video that we'll release. This is the driver officer video. And as I mentioned, our body worn has a 30-second delay. And so there's a pause for the sound initially, and then you'll pick up the sound and you'll see the actions of the officer. And we'll go ahead and proceed with the video. So what I'm going to do is go back to the second video, and there's one point that I'm going to stop the video, and you can see as the driver officer is exiting his vehicle. You will see his pause, you will see a delay, and you will, as you hear the 1 round being fired at officers. And this just shows how quick the officer-involved shooting occurred. You can hear the pattern and volleys of rounds being fired, the one from Mr. Ray, and the subsequent rounds being fired by the one officer, 8 rounds being fired at him at that time. That's all we have for the presentation and what we'll be releasing. Do any of you have any questions?
Just want to, I guess, reference that second video. A couple things about it. I think at one point you said when that one shot went, when you fired the one shot, you weren't sure if he was aiming at officers or the person who was in the car. I just wanted to clarify that.
Initially, when the officers responded to the scene, the officers were of the mindset that he was firing upon them. However, as you can notice during the video, they also wanted to check on the well-being of the individual who was inside the car, because they wanted to make sure that everyone, the greater good of the community, they wanted to make sure that everyone who could have been hit by that gunfire right there at that time was taken care of, and that we had no deceased or other victims in the area.
And just want to clarify with responding with, I know you mentioned several times that they had called for medical help, that there may have been a delay in providing that because of his proximity to the gun?
Well, as you noticed in the video, he kept moving around and moving around. The officers would not approach themselves because, one, they could not see the handgun. Two, they didn't know if they were being baited into a circumstance where other rounds would be fired. And three, they wanted to make sure that somebody else had eyes on the other side so that they were extremely clear that that gun was not being touched or in arm's reach to whereas he was going to take another shot at them.
Was this released because of the family wanting more, I guess, transparency from your department?
Well, this was released because of a lot of misinformation out there. There seems to be a lot of misinformation being transmitted to the community. And as chief of police, I felt that it was extremely clear that we put out the most factual information that we can possibly put out to make sure that the community know that, number one, we're going to operate above board. We're going to be extremely clear in our delivery, and we're going to show exactly what occurred that night. But let me be clear. There's not a member of this department who wants to take anyone's life. Our goal is preservation of life. And we want to be respectful to everyone. And we extend our condolences to the Ray family. But we have to make sure that we're putting out the information that is necessary and relevant for the greater good of our community. Yes, ma'am.
So, Chief, following up on her question, were you able to determine if the shot was fired at the police or if the shot was fired at the female?
So this investigation is still being handled by Aaliyah. There's certain information that I simply do not have right now today. And so the full scale of this investigation is handled by Aaliyah. We will, and I'm sure they will go back to make a determination exactly where this round landed, where it or what it struck. But what I was speaking to at this time was the mindset of the officer. They thought that they were being fired upon, but they also wanted to ensure the well-being of the individual still sitting in the car.
And either way, it falls under the use.
Either way, it is immediate defense of life. And under immediate defense of life, they have the ability to protect themselves and protect the lives of others, and also protect the lives of the greater community as a whole.
Can we expect to see you releasing these, should it happen again? I know y'all have not done so a lot in the past.
Well, you know, there's a lot of policy and other things going on behind the scenes. Normally, Aaliyah handles all of the investigations. And as police departments, we rely on them to provide the necessary information and communication, one, to the family, and two, to the community. So we're trying to negotiate with them to have a reasonable policy so that we're providing quality information to those who have a concern within our community, in addition to giving them an opportunity to complete an investigation. And here lies the critical part. When we release this video, it may taint a witness's opinion of what occurred, or it may change their statement. And so that's the part that we don't want to lose. We don't want to lose good, authentic information that we need to validate with the video.
Was releasing the video part of negotiation with the league?
Well, Well, yes and no. We released the video for the greater good of the community. We want to show that this police department, there's nothing to hide in what we do. Everything that we are doing is trying to be above board. We're trying to be consistent with our training. We're trying to make sure that the community has the right information before misinformation continues to fester within the community over something that we have the ability to correct with factual information.
Has the family seen the video that you've released to us, and how do they feel? How did they express it?
So after an officer-involved shooting, Aaliyah becomes the lead agency in terms of that investigation. They normally meet with the family, and they will normally provide whatever context information to the family, and they will allow them to see this video. And I know that they have about a week ago. And at that time, we had 2 members of the Birmingham Police Department who were there with them, just to make sure that if they had any questions or needs from us, that we had the opportunity to address it at that time. Any other questions? Okay, before I end here, there's one thing I want to address, and I just want to make sure that it's out there, the information is correct. There was information put out about the dash camera on that vehicle. And I want to make sure that everyone knows, and it's been widely publicized here in the city of Birmingham. First, we're building out a real-time crime center where we're bringing in all of our technology under one roof and making sure that we can view all of our technology. Over the past year, we've upgraded our tasers, and we've upgraded our body-worn cameras so that every officer on the Birmingham Police Department who's out in a field assignment will have a body-worn camera. The last part is our dash cams. Well, some vehicles will have dash cams, some will not. And that's number one, a budgetary issue, but also the second part is with the number of body-worn that we have out there, many a times it's just not necessary to have a dash cam on an older vehicle that we plan to take out of service at any given time. So it's not a must to have that, but we do make it a priority to have a body worn on as many officers or every officer that we possibly can in these major incidences.
And the reason we don't have dash cam is because there wasn't dash cam on this car.
There either wasn't dash cam on this car or the dash cam on this vehicle is outdated and not operating with the current system.
So the officer that we saw the most of in the video?
Yes.
That's the officer that fired the shot?
The officer that we saw